Hello, this is Alex from cables.gl. Let's take a look at trigger send and trigger receive. And I'll talk a little bit about what these modules are, but first let's put together a super simple scene and press tab or escape. And let's type in main loop. And I'm going to do the trick, which is shift enter, which won't close the search um, dialog. And then we will type in transform and then maybe a cube and of course Fong material. Okay, so here's our scene. Transform goes into the material and then into the cube, and we have a cube in the center of the screen. And I'll put in a timer, of course, to rotate the thing. I'll give it like 45 or something. Okay, so we got this scene, right? And let's imagine that this is part of a giant project or, um, you know, something a small part of a bigger thing, and we want to optimize this and, for example, move it away from the main loop that we're using to connect stuff to. And of course, if we do that, it starts getting a bit ugly, I guess, or it's just, if you have a lot of cables, and if I'll show you another project, you'll see what I mean. For example, here, you start getting into a territory where you're like looking at this thing 3 months from now, and you're like, I don't know where the post process effects are, or where's the texture for this fake lens thing, and I think um, this trigger extend and trigger receive, trigger send and trigger receive is very handy for organizing your patch visually, where you can have a section somewhere on the right for your image compose, and then you put a big comment there or something, and then your interaction is somewhere else and things like that. Okay, so let's drop those down. Trigger send and trigger receive. There we go. So here's this pair of operators we'll be using. And how do you use them? Well, let's plug in the main loop into this trigger send and then neatly put it over here, and then put in the trigger receive into the transform, and nothing is working. Why? Well, if you look over at the trigger send, there's this one and only parameter in the panel that says named trigger. And I don't know if you've already started experimenting with variables, but it's something along those lines, or at least the interaction with these operators is quite similar. And we'll definitely look at those in another video. But let's look at this. Name trigger. Okay, let's click it. And then it says create new one. And then dots. And I guess dots doesn't do anything, right? No, it doesn't, because we don't select any name trigger. And we don't have one. So this is where we create one. And we'll call it main loop and then underscore trigger. I'm pretending to use like good naming conventions here. But okay, so we have this trigger send now renamed to the name trigger that we just created. So it's already visually kind of helpful for us. So if we have it somewhere else, um, we're like, okay, the main loop sends a trigger, constant trigger, to this name trigger. And then we'll go over to our cool rotating cube section of our patch. And we have a trigger receive that we've placed and connected. And if we go down to this selection bit, we select our main loop trigger. And there you go, wireless cables. That's pretty cool. All right. And yeah, let's just, I mean, we're kind of done, but let's look at uh, some something like an old patch where you're like, what? And you want to just make it neater. And for example, I'll just quickly show you what we can do. For example, this section is kind of this triangle, right? And we don't really do much with it. It's just running by itself. And maybe let's move it over to the side, or get rid of this thing. So we'll type in trigger send, add. Okay, well, it doesn't create anything in the cable because it's one way, so you can't just like drag it in. That's okay. So, and then we will do trigger receive, receive, and we just hold down Shift Alt key on our keyboard and pick up this cable and then connect it to this one, and then connect this one here. So now our um, you know triangle is still okay. It's not running because we forgot to do this, or I'm sorry, I forgot to do the name trigger thing. So we'll create a new trigger, and then we'll do, this is the main loop for the triangle, and we'll just name it like this. And then when we go to this section, we will select it here, and now it's working. So yeah, I hope that makes some sense. And then for things like this, I think you'll have to watch another video, which I can't wait to make. Bye.